You've been running from the past, from pain, from the things you swore you'd never feel again. And at some point, escape became survival. You learned to keep yourself busy, to drown the silence and noise, to scroll away the ache, to smile when everything inside was screaming. You ran into work, into people, into perfection, into pretending, and maybe it worked for a while. But lately, you're starting to feel the cracks. The walls you built to protect yourself, they're suffocating you now. The masks you wear, they don't fit anymore. And the harder you run, the more lost you feel. Because you're not escaping life, you're escaping yourself. 1. The lie that survival is enough. There's a version of you that was built in crisis, a version forged in chaos. They learned how to survive, how to numb, hide, endure. But now that the danger's passed, you're still stuck in survival mode. Waking up tired, going through the motions, numbing with routine, telling yourself you're fine because things aren't falling apart. But what if fine is just a quieter kind of suffering? What if survival isn't the end goal, it's the starting point? You've made it through, but you've forgotten how to live, how to feel wonder, how to be still without panic, how to trust peace without waiting for the fall. Because for so long, the pain was the only thing that made you feel alive. And now that it's gone, you don't know who you are without it. 2. The emotions you refuse to face. Somewhere inside you is a box, locked tight, buried deep, filled with everything you never had time to feel. Grief, anger, shame, longing. You told yourself you didn't have time, you had to move forward, you had to be strong, you had to let it go. But emotions don't disappear just because you ignore them. They become tension in your shoulders, tiredness in your bones, weight in your chest. Unfelt feelings don't die, they wait. And when you finally stop running, they come flooding back. That's why silence feels so loud, why stillness makes you anxious, why you can't sit alone without reaching for a distraction. Because when the world quiets, your soul starts to speak, and you're terrified of what it might say. But here's the thing, you won't drown in what you feel, you'll drown in what you avoid. 3. The false comfort of distraction. We live in the age of escape, and it's never been easier to run from ourselves. Swipe, tap, next episode, next tab, next post. We scroll through highlight reels and wonder why our lives feel empty. We binge content about healing instead of actually feeling. We consume and consume but never digest. Because distraction feels like control, but it's not. It's avoidance wrapped in convenience. And after hours of stimulation, you're still alone, still unsettled, still aching for something real. You can't medicate a spiritual wound with digital anesthesia, and you can't outrun emptiness by throwing more noise into the void. Eventually, you run out of content, out of people, out of places to run, and all that's left is the truth. 4. The fear of facing who you've become. At some point, you stopped recognizing yourself. Not suddenly, gradually. Little compromises, little lies, little moments of pretending. You became who you needed to be accepted, to be safe, to be loved. But in the process, you abandoned who you truly are. Now when you look in the mirror, you see the roles: the achiever, the peacemaker, the perfectionist, the caretaker. But behind the performance, who are you? Who are you when no one's watching? The scariest part of stopping is realizing how far you've drifted. You escaped so many times you don't know your own voice anymore. But you're not beyond saving. That version of you buried, they're still there, still waiting, still whispering, still hoping you'll remember. 5. The shadow you refuse to integrate. Carl Jung said, "You don't become enlightened by imagining light, but by making the darkness conscious." There are parts of you don't want to see. The jealousy, the rage, the guilt, the need, the hunger, the trauma. You tell yourself, that's not me. You call it weakness, you call it shame. But the more you push it down, the more control it has over you. Your shadow isn't the enemy. It's a map, a record of everything you weren't allowed to feel. Every part of you that was punished, rejected, or shamed. And now it's clawing to the surface, not to destroy you, but to free you. You don't need to fight it. You need to listen. You need to see it. You need to hold it. Because until you face the parts of yourself you've been running from, you'll never feel whole. 6. The illusion of one day. You keep saying you'll deal with it later. When things calm down, when you're less busy, when life makes more sense, when you're ready. But one day is an illusion. It's a myth we tell ourselves to feel safe in the now. But healing doesn't live in the future. It starts in the discomfort of today. The more you delay the confrontation, the deeper the disconnection becomes. You keep waiting for permission to slow down, to feel, to fall apart. But no one is coming to give you that. You are the permission. And until you stop postponing your truth, you'll keep waking up to the same emptiness, wearing a different mask. 7. The unconscious addiction to escaping. You don't just escape for comfort. You escape because it's become identity, a loop, a reflex. You don't know how to sit with boredom without reaching for a screen. You don't know how to feel sadness without trying to fix it. You don't know how to feel anger without turning it inward. But underneath all that escaping is the one thing you truly want: peace. Not the shallow kind, not the spa day kind, but the kind that comes from being whole, from holding all of yourself without shame, without judgment, without running. That kind of peace, it doesn't come from fleeing the darkness. It comes from walking through it. The cost of escaping. Here's what escaping really steals from you: clarity. Because you can't see clearly when everything is filtered through fear. Connection. Because no one can truly love you if you're never fully present. Identity. Because if you're always performing, you never learn who you are without the mask. Time. Because every hour spent avoiding is an hour lost to numbness. You think you're protecting yourself, but you're fading. Slowly, quietly, unnoticeably, until one day you wake up and you don't remember what it feels like to be alive. The moment of stopping. But here's the shift. There's a difference between escaping and pausing. Escaping runs, pausing returns. Returns to the breath, to the feeling, to the truth, to the body. The moment you stop, really stop, you meet the part of you that's been holding on this whole time. Tired, silent, hopeful. And for the first time, you don't try to run, you stay. Closing, outro. So maybe this moment isn't a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. Maybe the discomfort isn't a punishment, it's a doorway. Maybe you weren't meant to run forever. Maybe this is the moment you turn around and face yourself. No more masks, no more distractions, no more one day. Just you, here, now. You keep escaping, but there's nowhere left to run. And maybe, just maybe, you don't have to anymore. Because the thing you've been running from is the only thing that can set you free. So now you stand at the edge. You've run through cities, through habits, through relationships, through identities that never truly fit. And here you are, breathless, exhausted, silent. But this moment, this stillness, is not defeat. It's the return. The return to the body, to breath, to feeling, to the sacred, uncomfortable truth of being here. Not in your past, not in your projections, not in the future you built in fear, but in this fragile, fleeting moment, the one you've avoided your whole life. And now that you're here, now that there's nowhere left to escape, ask yourself this: what would it look like to stop abandoning yourself? What would it sound like to speak from your core? What would it feel like to finally come home to your truth? Because escaping is easy. Anyone can run. But staying, facing, feeling, that's where life begins again. Not a perfect life, not a painless life, but a real one. So maybe this isn't the end of the road. Maybe it's the beginning. Not of who you're supposed to be, but of who you've always been. And now, you're finally ready to meet them.